I'm a software sales rep who often travels around the Midwest for work. On this business trip that brought me to a small rural town in Texas, I checked into a shabby roadside motel around midnight to stay for the night. This mom-and-pop motel only had 2 floors with probably a dozen rooms. I got an old, cramped single room on the 2nd floor, with just a twin bed, a writing desk and an armchair. The bathroom was tiny too, with only basic amenities. After putting my suitcase down, I decided to take a quick shower before turning in, as it was almost 1 a.m. As I took off my jacket, I noticed the room's window facing the woods behind the motel parking lot. In the darkness, I couldn't see anything in the woods. I closed the curtains and went into the bathroom for a shower. The walls were thin and the sound of the water echoed loudly in this cramped space. As I was washing my hair, I thought I heard faint murmuring voices, very soft but still audible amidst the shower noises. I turned off the faucet and listened intently. At first I thought it could be the TV next door. But after a few seconds, the room became dead silent again, and the murmurs disappeared. That's when I suddenly realized the voices were coming from outside the window, in the woods. I felt a chill down my spine, quickly put on my clothes and came out of the bathroom. The room was quiet, with curtains drawn. I couldn't see anything unusual outside. I turned on the night lamp and looked around the shabby room, the dusty furniture, spider webs in the corner, everything seemed normal. I opened the curtains and peered outside. It was pitch dark out there and I couldn't see anything in the woods. I stood there debating what I should do when suddenly, faint tapping noises came from the window pane. I jerked back, almost losing my footing. The taps paused briefly and continued, louder this time. I realized someone was out there knocking on my window. I was terrified. My mind raced thinking what I should do. More knocking came from outside, as if to draw my attention. I knew I had to decide my next step. I searched the room for something I could use to defend myself. Finally, I found a small Swiss Army knife in the writing desk drawer. Gripping the knife tight, I cautiously approached the window and pulled back the curtain a little. I peered outside quietly. The woods lay dark and I couldn't see a thing. Suddenly, a ghastly pale face appeared right on the other side of the glass, eyes fixed straight at me. I yelped and stumbled back. The face vanished from the window in a split second. I quickly drew the curtains, double-checked that the window was locked, then turned off the lights and hid under the bedsheet, shivering. I realized someone was out there lurking beneath my window, while I was trapped inside this small motel room with no easy way out. He seemed to be observing my every move and I had never felt more helpless and hopeless. I stayed awake the whole night hiding under the covers. I had no idea what this prowler's intention was, and feared he could break into the room any time to threaten my safety. As daylight slowly filled up the room, I finally plucked up my courage, tiptoed to the window and took a careful peek outside. There was no one out there and the woods were dead silent too. I heaved a big sigh of relief, packed my stuff in a hurry, checked out and left the motel immediately. The bone-chilling experience from this night still haunts me till this day. I never found out who was the mysterious prowler outside my window and what he actually intended to do. What if he did break into my room to rob, assault or even kill me? And just how prompt could the local police react to distress calls from a remote small-town motel in the middle of the night? All these unknowns are what terrify me the most looking back, and I still occasionally wake from nightmares about this, with the ghastly pale face and fixing stare emerging in my mind. I'm John, 32 years old. As a freelance writer, I often write articles for various magazines and websites. My job requires traveling around the US year-round to cover interesting local stories. As I'm on a tight budget, I often choose cheap roadside motels as my lodging. This spring, after interviewing a Native American elder from a reservation in Arizona, I came to Las Vegas. I booked a room at a high-end casino resort in this gambling city. It's a luxurious hotel with 3 towers, full of tourists trying their luck at the casino. My room was at the far end of an isolated hallway in one tower. After checking in, I wandered around the casino for a bit, played some poker and came back late. On my way back to the room, the nearby rooms were empty. This hallway was only lit up in my room while the rest sat in pitch black darkness, seeming to just have been house-kept. I didn't think much of it. I took a shower back in my room, changed into a t-shirt and shorts, then lounged in bed browsing Twitter. It was probably 1 a.m. As I was scrolling through my feed, suddenly a loud thumping noise boomed from the hallway outside, giving me a fright. I opened the door to check, but the long hallway was completely empty. I closed the door and went back to my phone. Maybe 10 minutes later, faint cries for help emerged from outside again. I first dismissed it as some TV noise from neighboring rooms. But the screams grew louder and more frantic. "Help me. Somebody help." I was extremely unnerved. I opened the door to check again, but still no one was visible along the hallway. As I struggled with whether I should step out and inspect, wild banging erupted from my door, followed by mad yelling, "He's trying to kill me. Help." It sent chills down my spine. I was about to call 911 when a huge crashing sound exploded outside and then, dead silence. I was dumbfounded by this sudden change of events, frozen in shock by the bed. After a few seconds, my brain started working again. I knew something horribly wrong had happened outside and that I must take action immediately. I swiftly grabbed my room keycard and phone and rushed to the door after a deep breath. The hallway was empty with not a soul in sight under the dim dancing lights on both sides. At the very end, the window was wide open with curtains fluttering in the wind. I gathered my courage and jogged towards it. Looking down, I saw a black and red figure lying motionlessly on the grass, seemingly lifeless. I almost collapsed to the floor, trembling violently as I dialed reception. In my panic, I probably babbled incoherently but basically told them about the banging on my door followed by desperate cries and a crashing thud, and that after coming out I discovered someone had fallen from the window. Reception immediately asked me to remain calm and that help would arrive soon. Soon the police rushed to the scene and pieced things together. It turned out the young lady that had fallen to her death was meeting a man at the hotel. For some unknown reason, the man had gone out of control and threw her out of the window. This was corroborated by the hallway security footage, which then solved this bizarre case. However, the CCTV covering the far end where I stayed happened to be faulty, so there was no footage of the actual process. I became the only eyewitness of this tragedy. Only then did I realize why the victim was banging hard on my door before her fall. She was probably trying to escape the assault from the man, stumbling into my door to cry out for help, but unfortunately it was not answered timely enough. The shouting and tussling from my door was from their fight, and the crushing loud thud should be when she smashed into pieces after falling from the 3rd floor. The police took me to the station to provide detailed statements before letting me go. I no longer had the courage to remain at the hotel for another night after the horrible ordeal, checking out early next morning. The incident had put an ominous shadow over my reporting trip. Till this day, that desperate loud knocking on the door and pleading screams still haunt me relentlessly. I had to halt this writing project and returned home much earlier than planned. I worked as a security guard at a large chain hotel when I was young. The hotel was located downtown in our city, with very modern and high-end decor. Due to understaffing, I was often assigned last-minute shifts to cover different times. One night, I was scheduled for the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. graveyard shift on a Wednesday. It was quiet as usual that night. I patrolled the long hallway on the 3rd floor twice without noticing anything unusual. At the end of this hallway was our file room and spare office, which rarely had people access it. After turning the corner, as per my routine, I checked the padlock hanging on the door to make sure it was still sturdily attached. But then I noticed a faint light seeping from under the door crack, which was very odd because theoretically no one should be in the file room or office at this hour. I promptly became alert, took out my flashlight and opened the door. I saw the desk lamp on the table was turned on, and a bald middle-aged man was sitting by the window, bowing his head down while fully concentrated on reading some documents. Hearing my footsteps, he slowly looked up and showed me his staff ID. This proved that he was indeed a hotel administrative staff. I apologized for intruding. He explained that he was working overnight on an urgent project assigned by the manager. I reminded him that no one should access this restricted area late at night without proper permit and logging. He became somewhat defensive and promised he'd remember next time. Before leaving, I registered his name and reminded him again to be extra careful when working late into the night near the windows. Back in the hallway, I continued my patrols every 20 minutes. Shortly after the clock struck 3 a.m., a guest emerged hastily from the elevator looking anxious, asking me if anyone had just walked past the exterior of the windows. I said no one had come on this floor except myself. He looked terribly freaked out, claiming he saw a shadow flitting past when he was about to sleep in room 318, scaring him out of his wits. I immediately guessed that he was referring to the exterior of the office window where I encountered the admin staff earlier. I promptly went to check the window, but that middle-aged man was no longer sitting in his seat. After knocking with no response, I suddenly heard the guest crying out again behind me, "There it goes again." I swiftly turned around shining my flashlight, but found nothing unusual after thoroughly searching the hallway. I urged the shaken guest to try to calm down, and suggested that perhaps he had misjudged the movements of tree shadows. But he insisted assertively that he clearly witnessed a black shadow dash past the far end of the hallway. I immediately reported the situation to the overnight duty manager, and took him to the scene. After speaking to the guest briefly, the duty manager arranged a room change for the guest on another floor. I remained behind to keep monitoring this hallway, and attempted to contact the questionable admin staff member. However, he was already out of contact, and furthermore, the phone number he left in his registry records did not exist at all. At this point, I myself also started to have serious doubts. The duty manager notified our hotel security team to comb through the entire building meticulously again. However, they found no sign of break-ins or unauthorized access. It was as if that admin staff member had vanished without leaving any trace. Left without further leads, the duty manager recorded the bizarre incident in detail for follow-ups by the day manager next morning. Soon my night shift ended and I went home, disturbed by the strangeness of that night's occurrences. This strange event left me restless and sleep-deprived. Not until the next day around noon did I receive a call from my colleague that the missing middle-aged admin staff has been discovered lying unconscious in an alley outside of the hotel, battered and drenched in blood. He was immediately rushed to the ER. Upon regaining consciousness, he claimed to have no recollection whatsoever of last night's events, and could not fathom why he would end up critically injured there. The police also came to investigate. However, checks on all surveillance cameras showed no suspicious person around the vicinity. The injuries of the victim were also freakish. He was severely beaten up with multiple heavy objects viciously, but there were no defensive wounds, almost as if he did not even put up a fight. With the guest having already checked out and left and no solid leads behind, the hotel management soon decided to close off and dismiss this entirely bizarre case without further investigation. However, every time I look back at that night's occurrences, I still get chilling feelings running down my spine.